The notification from Chase Private Client Services appeared on my phone at exactly 11:47 a.m. while I was reviewing quarterly derivatives reports in my corner office at Goldman Sachs. Unusual account activity alert. $45,000 withdrawal authorized via joint account access. I stared at the screen, watching my checking account balance drop from $67,000 to $22,000 in real time. This wasn't the first unauthorized withdrawal I'd discovered over the past 3 months, but it was certainly the largest. Someone had been systematically draining my accounts using joint access permissions I'd granted years ago for emergency purposes, when I first started working in Manhattan. The someone was my family. Dad, specifically, who'd been using the emergency access I'd provided when I moved to New York to pursue my career in quantitative finance. The same emergency access that was supposed to be limited to genuine crises like medical bills or housing emergencies, not funding his failing landscaping business and my brother Marcus's endless series of entrepreneurial disasters. To my family back home in Connecticut, I was still little Katie, who'd gotten lucky with a finance job in the big city. They had no idea that their 28-year-old daughter was actually a senior quantitative analyst managing algorithmic trading strategies worth $1.2 billion. Or that my annual compensation exceeded most people's lifetime earnings. I deliberately maintained this fiction, driving my modest Honda when I visited home, living in what appeared to be a normal Manhattan apartment, and discussing my work in vague terms that supported their assumption I was just another Wall Street worker bee. But their financial desperation had been escalating for months, and the emergency withdrawals were becoming routine. $5,000 here for Dad's equipment payments. $8,000 there for Marcus's latest business venture. $15,000 for Mom's medical procedures that insurance somehow didn't cover. Each withdrawal came with elaborate explanations and promises of immediate repayment that never materialized. Dad would call with urgent stories about cash flow problems that required immediate attention. Marcus would text about once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunities that just needed quick capital injection. Meanwhile, they'd been portraying their lifestyle as comfortable middle-class success, posting social media updates about family vacations, new purchases, and business achievements that I'd now realized were entirely funded by money they'd been stealing from my accounts. The pattern had crystallized during last month's family dinner, where Marcus had spent an hour describing his latest business venture, a food truck operation that was definitely going to be the next big thing. He'd shown everyone photos of the truck, the permits, the equipment, all funded by the $23,000 he'd withdrawn from my account 2 weeks earlier. Dad had nodded approvingly at Marcus's entrepreneurial spirit while Mom praised his business acumen. They'd spent the evening discussing Marcus's bright future while I sat quietly, knowing that his successful launch was built entirely on money he'd stolen from my Chase account. But they hadn't seen it as stealing. In their minds, I was family, I had money available, and family helped each other during difficult times. The fact that these difficult times had been ongoing for months, with no repayment in sight and escalating withdrawal amounts, didn't factor into their justifications. Katie's always been so generous, Mom had told her sister over dessert, completely unaware that my generosity was actually systematic financial theft enabled by joint account access. She understands that family comes first, especially when Marcus is building something important. Marcus's food truck had failed within 3 weeks, joining the long list of his business ventures that had consumed my money while producing nothing except debt and false optimism. The morning's $45,000 withdrawal had apparently been for Marcus's newest venture, a cryptocurrency trading operation that he described to the family as guaranteed returns through automated arbitrage. I opened the Chase Private Client app and began reviewing 3 months of unauthorized withdrawals. The total was staggering: $127,000 in systematic theft disguised as family assistance. It was time to call the fraud prevention team. The Chase Private Client Fraud Prevention Hotline connected me directly to Senior Investigator Linda Rodriguez, whose voice carried the authority of someone who'd seen every possible variation of financial exploitation. I explained the pattern of unauthorized withdrawals while she pulled up my account history in real time. "Ms. Thompson, I'm looking at your account activity over the past 3 months. These withdrawals show a clear escalation pattern consistent with systematic exploitation. The amounts have increased from $3,000 to $45,000, with no corresponding deposits or repayments. That's correct. The joint account access was intended for genuine emergencies, but it's being used to fund failed business ventures and personal expenses. And these are family members with authorized access? My father and brother. They were added to the account when I first moved to Manhattan, in case I needed emergency assistance. I never imagined they'd use it to drain my savings. Linda's typing echoed through the phone as she documented the case details. Ms. Thompson, joint account abuse by family members constitutes fraud under federal banking regulations, regardless of the relationship. Authorized access doesn't mean unlimited access for any purpose. That afternoon brought a flurry of family communications that revealed the full scope of their financial delusions. Dad called first, his voice cheerful and completely oblivious to any wrongdoing. Katie. Great news about Marcus's crypto venture. He's already identified several arbitrage opportunities that should generate significant returns within the first month. The $45,000 was perfect timing. He needed to move fast before the market window closed. I let him continue his explanation while documenting the call for the fraud investigation. Dad's casual tone suggested he genuinely believed he was providing investment updates rather than confessing to bank fraud. The beauty of this system, Dad continued, is that it's completely automated. Marcus learned about algorithmic trading from some YouTube videos, and he's confident he can generate at least 20% monthly returns. We should have your money back with profits within 6 weeks. YouTube videos. Marcus was planning to trade cryptocurrency using strategies he'd learned from YouTube, with money he'd stolen from my investment banking account. The irony was suffocating, considering my actual job involved designing the exact type of algorithmic trading systems he was planning to learn from internet tutorials. Marcus's follow-up text was equally delusional. Thanks for the investment, sis. This crypto arbitrage system is going to make us all rich. Finally found a way to put your savings to work instead of just sitting in boring bank accounts. My savings. He'd convinced himself that systematic theft was actually smart investment management on my behalf. The $127,000 he'd stolen represented boring bank accounts that needed to be optimized through his superior financial expertise. But the most revealing communication came from Mom, whose text message showed how they'd been justifying their behavior to extended family. So proud of how our kids support each other. Katie's investment in Marcus's business shows real family solidarity. She's always been practical, but now she's learning to think like an entrepreneur. They'd rewritten the narrative completely. Instead of acknowledging theft, they'd convinced themselves and others that I was voluntarily investing in Marcus's ventures. My stolen money had become evidence of my evolution from practical to entrepreneurial, with Marcus as my financial mentor. The family group chat lit up with supportive messages from relatives praising Marcus's business acumen and my willingness to think bigger than traditional savings accounts. Aunt Susan commented on how smart it was to invest in family instead of letting banks make money off your deposits. My phone rang with Linda Rodriguez calling back with preliminary investigation results. Ms. Thompson, I've completed the initial fraud analysis. The withdrawal patterns show clear intent to circumvent your actual investment capabilities. Your family members appear to believe you're living paycheck to paycheck while they're actually accessing funds from a high net worth account. They have no idea about my actual financial situation, I confirmed. They think they're maximizing my limited savings, not stealing from someone who manages billion-dollar portfolios professionally. That's going to make the criminal charges more serious, Linda explained. Systematic exploitation of family members often involves additional fraud charges related to misrepresentation and ongoing deception. Criminal charges. The family that had been celebrating Marcus's entrepreneurial success was about to learn that their celebration was built on federal banking crimes. And their assets were about to be frozen until the investigation was complete. Revelation. 540 words. Thursday morning brought the call I'd been expecting from Linda Rodriguez. Ms. Thompson, we're executing the asset freeze and initiating criminal proceedings today. I need you to come to the bank for witness testimony and evidence documentation. The Chase Private Client Banking Center in Midtown Manhattan looked more like a luxury hotel lobby than a traditional bank, with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and private consultation rooms where they handled sensitive financial matters for high-net-worth clients. Linda had arranged for Dad and Marcus to come in for what she described as a routine account verification meeting following unusual activity flags. They'd arrived separately, Dad in his work clothes from the landscaping business, Marcus in the expensive casual wear his stolen money had purchased. I watched from the observation room as they settled into the main conference room, both completely confident they were there to clarify some minor banking confusion. Dad was actually smiling, probably planning to explain how family members naturally helped each other with financial matters. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Marcus Thompson, Linda began, her fraud investigator credentials prominently displayed on the conference table. I'm investigating unauthorized withdrawals totaling $127,000 from accounts belonging to Catherine Thompson over the past 3 months. Dad's smile faltered slightly. Unauthorized? Katie gave us emergency access years ago. We've been helping her maximize her investment returns instead of leaving money sitting idle. Mr. Thompson, emergency account access doesn't authorize systematic withdrawals for personal business ventures. These transactions constitute bank fraud under federal law. Marcus jumped in with his usual confident ignorance. Look, my sister works some basic finance job on Wall Street. She makes decent money but doesn't understand advanced investment strategies. I've been optimizing her capital allocation through cryptocurrency arbitrage. Linda's expression remained professionally neutral as she opened a thick folder. Mr. Marcus Thompson, your sister Catherine is a senior quantitative analyst at Goldman Sachs, managing algorithmic trading strategies worth $1.2 billion. Her annual compensation is $847,000, and her personal investment portfolio exceeds $2.3 million. The silence in the conference room was deafening. She's not a basic finance worker, Linda continued. She's one of the most sophisticated financial professionals in the industry. The money you've been optimizing represents less than 6% of her liquid assets. Dad's face went white. Katie works at Goldman Sachs? Senior level, Linda confirmed. She's been managing institutional derivatives while listening to you explain cryptocurrency trading strategies you learned from YouTube videos. That's when I entered the conference room, carrying my Goldman Sachs identification and the portfolio management documentation that showed my actual professional credentials. Hello, Dad. Marcus. I took a seat across from them, noting how their confident expressions had transformed into something approaching terror. I think it's time we discussed my actual financial situation. Marcus's voice came out as a whisper. You manage billion-dollar portfolios? Multiple billion-dollar portfolios, I confirmed. While you've been stealing money to fund cryptocurrency schemes you don't understand, I've been designing the trading algorithms that professional funds use for actual arbitrage operations. Mr. Thompson, Linda interrupted, federal agents are currently freezing your business accounts and personal assets pending resolution of this fraud investigation. The family that had been celebrating Marcus's entrepreneurial success was discovering that their celebration had been built on federal crimes. 6 months later, I signed the final fraud investigation paperwork in my new corner office at Goldman Sachs, where my successful handling of the family financial crimes case had earned me a promotion to Managing Director of Quantitative Strategies. The federal investigation had been swift and comprehensive. Dad received 18 months in federal prison for systematic bank fraud and conspiracy charges. His landscaping business had been liquidated to cover restitution payments, though the $127,000 he'd stolen represented only a fraction of the assets seized during the investigation. Marcus got 3 years for wire fraud, money laundering, and operating an unregistered investment scheme. His cryptocurrency arbitrage operation had been revealed as a basic Ponzi structure that had defrauded 2 other families besides ours. The YouTube trading strategies had cost his investors nearly $400,000 before federal agents shut down his operation. Mom had avoided criminal charges but lost the house when it emerged that mortgage payments had been made with stolen funds. She'd moved to a studio apartment and was working retail while Dad served his sentence. The extended family had disappeared entirely once the criminal charges became public knowledge. Uncle Mike's questions about investing with Marcus had been replaced by careful distance from any association with the Thompson family fraud case. My actual colleagues at Goldman Sachs had been supportive throughout the investigation, understanding that family financial exploitation was unfortunately common among high earners. The firm's legal department had handled media inquiries, and my professional reputation had remained intact. My personal investment portfolio, no longer being drained by systematic theft, had grown to $3.7 million. I'd purchased a penthouse overlooking Central Park and maintained accounts at 3 different private banks to prevent future family access. The emergency joint account permissions had been permanently revoked. Dad's claims about family helping family had been replaced by federal criminal convictions. Their systematic theft had ended the moment the fraud team stepped in. And I was finally free to build wealth without subsidizing their delusions about my financial competence or their rights to my money.